All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back in an open meeting. If everybody would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call up a couple of items out of order. The first thing I'm going to call is for consideration of individual item number 3, consideration and approval to procure consulting services to secure the necessary permits in Mexico for the construction of the Brownsville Matamoros Weir and Reserve project. Mr. Ruziak.
Mr. Chairman, just based on what we heard tonight, if we could defer that or table that maybe to a future meeting so we have enough time to look at the proposals presented tonight and bring back a recommendation to the board.
Okay, we do have a couple of meetings coming up. I think the 23rd of this month, and then somewhere talking about attending a meeting the first week in December.
Yes.
So we'll table it to one of those meetings probably.
If the board could.
Okay. Also move. I have a motion to table. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we're going to go to the consent items. Is there anything anybody needs to delete or talk about on the consent items?
Mr. Chairman, first, I appreciate you moving these items up because I have to leave. My concern on 2 is that if the bidder submitted and complied with the requirements to submit the bids, to reject all bids, that puts them at a disadvantage at the rebidding because everybody knows what they did. And I think
I'm sorry.
Item number 2.
I think if the bidding process was followed and bids were submitted, I think we should go based on what's been submitted, not just reject them, because then I think it puts those.
What was the reason?
The nature of the need to reject them is, I believe they were released as bids for construction, and these are actually for personal services. These are to do the groundkeeping, personal services, not necessarily, they didn't have to follow the construction's type of specs. So, and then there were some issues with the performance bond. I think we're lowering to 25% the performance bond requirement.
But did somebody, first of all, did anybody comply with the RFP?
We did subject the proposal that came in to legal review, and based on guidance from legal, because we didn't do it as personal services, we did it as construction. More than likely they did. Do you want to address that? But we want to follow the correct procedure for this type of service, which is personal service and they're not actually construction service.
I mean, what's the risk of that particular wording, personal services? I mean, I agree with the mayor that this is the 3rd time that this thing's gone up for bid.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're sending a very bad message if it's like we're changing the game rules and we're reshuffling the cards, and those that comply, if they comply with a bond, if they comply with the requirements that we asked for, to reject their bids is grossly unfair to them, because then now everybody knows their bid.
Let me ask you, the bid's open,
Yes, yes.
so that became public knowledge. It does give the uncomplying person disadvantage now with the person.
But they were both compliant.
Yes, they were both compliant. It's just that the documents that went out, they were as a construction document.
We want to correct this deficiency, but if the board directs us to proceed with the low bid, we can do it.
We need to look at the bids.
Yeah.
Mr.
Last time this bid was out, was the wording the same as it was in this bid?
Yes, sir. It was.
The wording was the same, and you still
It's
decided?
just that at this time, we are looking more into it, and that's how we found out that last time it had gone as a construction contract, and now we want to go
And it was
the
still
proper
awarded?
way. Yes.
What is the legal, what is the recommendation?
David Centroli is the one that guided us on this, and I think they just left.
Well, the way that I understand the history of this deal is that at first it went out and there was only one bid, and therefore
No, so there were 2 bids.
Yeah, but one bid complied with all the requirements.
Both of them were compliant,
From the initial one?
yes, and
I understood
that's why
only
we.
one.
I understood only-
The legal
So what-
advisor.
Why did we rebid it this last time?
Because,
This is the third time.
no, sir, this is the first time. We rebid it last year because we needed to go out for bids. Our term had already expired. So we went out for
It
bids
was not,
last year.
it was put off, and this is only the second time it's come to the board, but not, it wasn't rebid twice.
No,
Table last meeting.
It was only tabled, the adoption, the approval was only tabled. It's not been rebid twice.
The way that I understand the history of it is originally there was, the reason that it was, had to be delayed on the bidding was that nobody else bid except for that one bid. And so therefore, it went for rebidding, so that way it would have enough time to get somebody else to bid. And then the bids were done, and then the performance bond issue came up, and now again it's going up for rebidding.
no, sir, it wasn't rebid. At the beginning, it was extended due to the fact that we only received one bidder.
It was extended.
Yes, sir. We did not open at that time any bids until the extension date.
I think that's.
We can bring it back on the 23rd.
The problem is that, again, the other bidder, who, the high bidder, shall we say, now, knows what the low bidder bids. That's always a problem, when you have opening bids and then reject them all. You know one is in compliance with all the qualifications.
Well, both of
They
them
were-
were
they
in
were all in
compliance.
compliance.
They're all in
They
compliance.
were all in compliance with what they asked for.
Right.
There's not an issue here about one company not fulfilling part of what they were asked. They all submitted the proper bid, the proper documentation.
It's just a request for
The difference is that the bid should have been one for personal services rather than a bid for construction.
Exactly.
And, you know, I don't know I mean, I was not a part of the reason to turn down the bids, but since, you know, both bid under the same conditions, you know, if the board feels that you ought to accept the bid, there's no reason why you can't accept it and modify the contract to come under personal services versus,
And we can
if that's the
post it.
wish, if that's the wish of the board.
I would like to see the bids, they're not here. And did both bid on a timely manner, or was somebody given additional time to comply with the bond
No, sir.
requirements?
No, everything was submitted on time, everything was open on time. It's just the fact that the original bid documents were for a construction contract instead of personal services.
Correct me if I'm-
This Mr. Davidson right there, right?
Mr. Chairman?
John probably.
You don't know.
correct me if I'm wrong. What I understood is that one bidder did not comply with the bond. And then you went back and you said, okay, no, after the fact, yes, we did find the bond, it was in there, but we didn't locate it. What was that?
Exactly.
What was the problem with it?
Well, it was not a problem, it was just that whatever bid security was submitted to us back then when we bid it out, PUB kept it by mistake. I mean, we didn't return it.
We still had a
But we
cashier's
still
check
have
on
it, and
file,
it's still
so we
good.
honored it.
Yeah,
For the bond.
We honored it.
yes, that's what we're saying,
Did
that
you
both
find out
bidders are in
anything, Mr.
compliance.
Davidson?
It's one of his staff,
Associate.
Dick O'Neill was one of the candidates. Now,
Well, gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion on this particular item, whichever way you all want to.
I make a motion to table it to the next meeting to where they bring the bidders so we can see what it's all about.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. Let's go ahead and do the rest of the consent items since we're here. Anybody have any questions?
Any exclusion? Somebody needs to give a real estate.
Any-
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, amendments, additions?
Item number 3, the Analab Corporation, excuse me. Should I see it? Is that going to be an extension?
Yes, you probably focused in on some of the dates here. The initial approval by the board was in 2007, should have been for 2 years, 07 through 08 through 09. Now, in '08, it was inadvertently brought to the board thinking that we needed a year-to-year, but we had actually the 2 years initial. So what this will do is extend it for another 2 years, the second 2-year term
From
through 2011.
2009 to 11.
Right.
Is the total change?
The total, I believe, does not change.
Does not change.
Am I correct on that?
That's right.
Total does not change.
Does not change.
All right, any other discussions on any of the consent items? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve all the other consent items. I have a motion, do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to approve all the other consent items, which are 1 through 7, including 2, which have already been voted on. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. They get approved. Let's go back to our regular agenda order. Mr. Brusiak, I believe you're.
We got the action in closed session.
Oh, the action in closed session, yes. I'll entertain the motion to authorize the purchase of the property as discussed in closed session. I have a motion by Dr. White. I have a second by Mr. Host. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Approved. Mr. Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, General Manager, we've got the financial report and the calendar. You have a calendar in front of you with a lot of things on there. The other thing I want to bring to your attention, we have a special meeting the 23rd on some contracts to award, and we do need one on the 30th if we can, very shortly. That's okay.
30th?
Yes.
Instead of the first, second.
I'm sorry, excuse me, December 1st
December 1st,
and the 23rd.
25th, 30th.
If we could do short one on the 1st. Got an insurance on it, and it won't take very long.
All right. That's your calendar. All right.
The 23rd?
It would be on the 23rd. And it would be the December 1st.
Mr. Garcia, go ahead and do the financial report then.
Yes.
This is the financial performance report through the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2009. Now, these are unaudited numbers. Our auditors are currently on the premise. They started today doing beginning their field work. So we're hoping that some of these numbers will stay intact. Very few adjusting entries. But just want to go over some of the highlights here. Gross revenues were $176,763,173 through the end of the year. This consisted of $170.4 million in operating revenues, and then other revenues and interest, bringing it up to $176, $6 million there. Fuel, total costs for fuel were $61,785,000. The wholesale expenses that generated that $6.3 million on line 2 were $4.3 million, so we had almost a $2 million margin there. Southmost operating and debt service total $4,352,653. The total adjusted gross revenues were $106,290,142. This is what we used to calculate the city transfer 10%, which amounted to $10,629,14. Now the city did experience cost savings in their usage. They had budgeted $4.5 million in usage, but ended up $4.2 million. So it did end up, and then along with us having more revenues than expected, the city transfer is going to be $6.4 million versus $5.6 million that was budgeted. That's almost $718,000 more that's going to the city as a result of both more revenues and less usage on their part. So very favorable for the city. O&M expenses through the year were $51,444,988, line 15. Debt service $21,995 for total requirements of $73,440. This excluding fuel and Southmost, this leaves a balance of $28,621,886. And there in the parentheses on line 18, I show that the CLB usage was $4.2 million. A little less, $300,000 less than what they budgeted, what he had budgeted for them. The transfers to the city are $6.4 million. And the balance available for PUB is $22,220,444. And that has contributed to funding the reserve funds, $1 million to the operating reserve fund, $4 million for the fuel sub account, $10.7 million for the improvement fund, and $1.5 million for the improvement reserve fund. This left a net surplus balance of $4,962,694, of which $3 million we brought to the board in October to earmark or to appropriate to electric CIP projects after having adjusted the budget for the city's $3 million economic stabilization fund. Net operating revenues of $170.4 million were $10.5 million below budget, or 6%, and $42 million below 2008 actual levels, or 20%. And most of the difference there between 08 and 170-09 is fuel related. We had more fuel expenditures that we recovered through the fuel factor, and then some also, some of the difference is attributable to the off-system sales. We had significantly higher off-system sales in 2008. Gross revenues, $221 in 2008, were $44 million more than our $176 million in 2009. So we were way under the 08 levels, and as well as under budget by $12 million. Difference between 189 and 176. The adjusted gross revenues of $106 million were slightly above the budgeted 102 by $3.8 million, and below the 2008 levels by $13 million, that 119. Fuel and energy costs, I mentioned, were a big factor in the difference between 08 and 09. Our fuel costs for 09 were $61.8 million, or $26 million less than the 2008 requirements of $88.3 million. Also below the $74.5 million budgeted for 09, or $12.7 million variance there. O&M expenses of $49.8 million were $5 million under budget and $600,000 over 2008 levels. So pretty much constant to or in line with the actual 08, $600,000 difference there. Balance available, as I mentioned, was 28.6, of which 22.2 funded the utilities reserves, and 6.4 went to the city as a net cash transfer. Electric provided most of the balance to surplus, 22.7. $2 million came from water and $3.93 million from wastewater. I do want to mention that the water and wastewater funds were positive, stayed positive after mid-year. The early months of the year were negative. We were negative even after covering the city transfer. We did end up the year very positive in the water and wastewater funds. Consumption for electric for the month of September was 127 million kilowatt hours. That 127, it was above the 2008 123 level. As you can see, we were able to stay above the 08 levels in the months of July, August, and September. Up through June, we had stayed below 2008 levels, but we did, during the summer, the latter part of the summer, exceed the 08 levels. Overall, we were 2%, or 25,716,178 kWh below 2008 levels. Water continued to stay above 2008 levels and the 5-year average at 664,446. In the water fund, we were able to stay above 08 levels beginning back in April. So the months April through September were exceeded the 08 levels as well as the 5-year average. Overall, we ended up 6.6% above 08 levels, so for 437,614,000 gallons there. Same thing with wastewater. Since April, we were above 08 levels, and the 5-year average ended up at September 433,491 versus the 338 2008 levels. Here again, we were almost 5% above 2008 levels on the cumulative basis. Precipitation levels, the red line, you can see it between August and September, we did experience a lot of rain, and that was indicative and also in the water consumption going down between August and September. The blue line here for 2008 was the Hurricane Dolly, and then Ag Pike after that. So we did have over 12 inches of rain in 2008 during July. In August, between August and September, we did record over 9 inches there, the red line. Temperature stayed constant with the 2008 and 5-year average. We do continue to stay below the local providers at 89.61 on the electric, 1,000 kWh per month user. The highest being 144.95 there with CPL in the middle, and then several of them between 100 and 116, and then some of over 120. So we do continue to stay very favorable at 89.61 compared to Magic Valley and the other local providers. Compared to other municipal utility-owned utilities, the only one that is below us and by a very small margin is New Brownsville's. Third from the right at 89.58. We're here compare favorably with the other utilities throughout Texas, City of San Antonio, Austin Energy, San Marcos, Kerrville. As I mentioned, only New Braunfels is slightly below us. CIP, the total spending plan was $76 million, of which 52% was either spent or encumbered, or $40 million. 34% came from electric, $13,925,000, 18% from water, and 45% from wastewater. The wastewater, $18 million, reflects the spending we started doing with the in preparation of the ARA projects. We have spent a lot of, or almost $8 million in commercial paper funding sources to accommodate the engineering design and some of the projects that are having to be done in line with the ARA projects. And that concludes my financial report.
Anything else, Mr. Brugge? All right. By the way, do we have anybody who wanted to speak? Anybody signed up? No? All right. Go to item number 4, quarterly investment activity report for period ending September 30th, 2009, pursuant to chapter 2256-1023. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, we are required to bring this quarterly investment report to the board as prescribed by the Public Funds Investment Act and our investment policy. I do have some of the slides on PowerPoint that I'll be going over. The first one is the pie chart, which on the hard copy you can find on page 7. This one reports on the share of each investment type compared to the overall investment portfolio. The red piece of the pie there represents 62%, and it represents our investment pools and money market funds. And as you can see, the yellow is the next biggest chunk, agency securities at 24%. We do have some certificate of deposits, 4%, and then our bank deposits with Wells Fargo at 9%, and then a U.S. Treasury note that we have 1%. We are in compliance in terms of diversification here. We do have upper limits on some of these investment types of 75%, so we're well below any of the upper limits per the investment policy. This yield summary can be found on page 9 of the hard copy, and this is this one sheet captures most of the information that we're required to convey to the board. Overall, we have a portfolio with a par value of with a market value of $126,543,000. That would be the market value column here. Some of the instruments that are investment in nature, the agency securities, the certificates of deposits have a par of $36.5 million. On the agency securities here, we have, all of them are invested for pretty much a 2-year term, with the exception of one $3 million piece here. We've been able to get close to, well, I can't say close to 2%, but above 1% for the 2-year type investments, and below 1% for that 1-year investment of $3 million at 0.63 was the lowest one. So they do range from 0.63 to 2%. Very difficult at this point to get anything above 2% or 2.5%, unless we go out further out, or unless we structure an investment to have quarterly call dates or weekly call dates, or something that would not guarantee the term, the full term of the investment. So we do look at stabilizing some of the investments and try to minimize the call features for some of these agency securities to where we can project the revenues and lock in a favorable rate for at least 2 years. We do have monies on account with Wells Fargo in order to maintain the operating needs. That's only earning 0.43 yield. Our tax pools and our investment pools are also earning very low rates of 0.32, 0.3, 0.4. It's very difficult to get anything higher from these investment pools when the rates are set on a daily basis, and more of a short-term rate is part of these pools. The CDARS program, we were fortunate to lock in back in January at a 2.81%. Unfortunately, $5 million is all we can do with Falcon Bank. That was our limit. So we've kept that $5 million at 2.81, and that's probably our highest yielding investment at this point. And then we have a U.S. Treasury note slightly above 1%. Overall, our yield is 0.78, well below what we've been used to in the past, but nonetheless in compliance with the investment policy in terms of diversification and security and protection of the investment. This is the only one I want to touch on, since it provides the overall portfolio makeup. I'll be glad to answer any questions at this point.
Anybody have any questions? No, thank you very much, Mr. Garcia.
You're welcome.
Well, your next one is number 5. Consideration and approval for the general manager to negotiate a contract for professional accountant and federal grant compliance services in connection with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act grant funding. Mr. Garcia.
The grant funding, the $46 million that we're getting through the Texas Water Development Board, will require compliance with EPA standards and federal requirements, including Davis-Bacon, Buy America, other payroll type requirements. We do anticipate having 15 projects, 15 contracts over a 2-year period. We've been informed that the Water Development Board will be very strict in enforcing these grant requirements, labor-related, especially standard hours work, act-related, procurement-related issues. So we did put out a request for qualifications, see what interest was out there in assisting PUB in getting assistance from an accounting firm to help PUB with the weekly review and internal control setup at the contractors. I myself have been to a few of the pre-bid meetings, and I know some of the contractors have been concerned and will probably be overwhelmed, if we don't provide some type of assistance. Our goal is through this contract is to help the contractors establish good internal controls, good reporting, just the general system that will be required to generate the necessary paperwork that POB will need to forward or to substantiate our reimbursement claims to the Water Development Board. Our goal is to have zero disallowed costs and to meet every requirement imposed on us. And so what we've done is put out an RFQ, and we did have 3 firms respond to that RFQ. The first one was Long and Chilton, the second one is Ricardo Gomez and Associates, and the third one is Weaver and Tidwell. Long and Chilton is a local firm. As you all know, Ricardo Gomez is out of Rio Hondo, and Weaver and Tidwell is out of San Antonio. The 2 top-ranked firms here are Weaver and Tidwell and Long and Chilton. And both of them have strengths, as you can see in the categories, the 6 categories that they were rated by. Weaver and Tidwell was strong in establishing the team, well-defined. They have 3 CPAs, 1 CIA, a lot of grant experience. They were specific in what they've been exposed to, Davis-Bacon, Standard Hours Act, et cetera, et cetera. So they outlined the proposal very well. Their weak part was, of course, we've never worked with them, and they're from out of town. Long and Chilton was strong in some areas. They did identify 2 of the partners who would be part of the team, and 2 newly hired individuals. One as recent as 2008 graduate in 2007. So, but we're hopeful that the partners involved will or do possess the federal compliance requirements. Both firms have done audits of local government agencies and are familiar with the federal grant requirements. So what we're hoping today is to seek authorization to continue negotiations or to begin negotiations with one of the top 2 in terms of negotiating a price, probably an hourly rate, and extend that, for a 2-year period, and then bring back a recommendation to the board probably on November 23rd. We do anticipate, as I mentioned, this to be a 2-year agreement, 104 weeks, totaling about 1,040 hours. Estimating if they come in at about $100 an hour, based on a blended rate of the partner staff and their overhead, we're looking at about a range of about $105,000 to up to $130,000 if it's $125 an hour. So at this point, it's just a matter of negotiating with one that y'all feel comfortable with. Now, we didn't bring them in because it's just standard accounting, labor review records, and setting up a little system for each of the 15 so that we can feel comfortable that the record keeping will substantiate our claims.
There's only a 2-point differential.
There's only a 2-point differential, but it's a given that with 10 hours a week every week for 2 years, there's going to be some lodging and travel expenses if somebody from out of town gets the job. So that's the only distinction there that
Do I have a recommendation or a motion by anybody for either of the 2 firms?
I've got one thing.
One more thing. I do want to mention.
External auditor.
I'm sorry?
About the external auditor.
Yes, if Long and Chilton is a successful firm, they will have to forego submitting a proposal to be an external auditor. Pursuant to SCPR rules and State Board of Public Accountancy rules, you cannot provide management services and be an external auditor. So if this engagement goes through 2011, the next audit they would have to be involved, or they could be involved with the 9/30/2012 audit. I plan to bring this issue to the Finance Committee and see how the Finance Committee, with certain options, we can proceed with the RFP for external auditor, because it will be up this will be the last year for the current external auditor, so our plan was to put it out for bid in February or March for next September's audit.
Let's put it this way, if we decided to go like with Long and Shilton, Mr. Brusiak still has to negotiate with them. And
Correct.
if not reach an agreement, then they're, you know, then we have to negotiate with the next.
Right, but I just want to make that clear,
They
that,
could-
and they're aware,
They don't want to
Right,
actually.
that's correct.
they're aware of the external auditor situation, and they're willing to forego 2 years if we were to put it out for bid and they were successful, but
You went ahead and requested their qualifications, right? So
Right.
They actually wanted to be included.
yes, they want to be included in this,
And they
and
understood that.
they understand that,
Included from being considered for the external auditor.
correct. Well, depending on the finance committee's direction, I get, on how to extend it for a year or two, or just go out for another 3 years.
I recommend we go with the local
Long and Shilton,
Yes.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have several seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Brusiak, you're authorized to post Long and Shilton. All right. Mr. Garcia, this is your day today, isn't it? Consideration and approval to provide commercial paper funding for water and wastewater capital improvement projects revised for the period of October 2009 through December 2009.
As we've done in the prior months, we are bringing the commercial paper funding plan to you as needed. Our engineers have revisited the plan and have added some projects for November and December. If you go to the last page, on page 4, the November requirements are $3,864,000, and December requirements are $1,328,000. We had already touched on some of the October funding of the $1.3 million. So what this does is this brings our overall cumulative commercial paper funding to $24,312,412, of which $18,514,000 is related to wastewater. And a lot of the wastewater, has been related to the engineering, design, the area management type of activities. 5.7, almost 5.8, has been earmarked for water. I do want to mention that that's pretty much a cap for the water commercial paper funding that we said when we brought the 2010 budget to the board. Affordability on the water side is not there for anything in excess of $6 million, so we'll have to monitor that a little closer and make use of available funds if projects get completed, or if we have a prioritized project, do some type of exchange there if we need to.
So in essence, if we don't do anything with rates, this is as much as we can fund
On the water side, yes.
Based on what rates we have today, and based on this funding, we're maxed out.
Correct.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion then. Anybody make a motion?
I make a motion that we go with staff's recommendation on the approval of commercial paper fund.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Second. Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. It's been approved. Since you've taken up the consent item agenda items, and there are no one to speak, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for attending.